So imagine you're a person who has been relegated to totally uninsured status, and now you can't go into any stores, you can't go to the grocery store, you can't rent an apartment, you can't get a job. Nobody wants anything to do with you. You're relegated completely to the fringes of society, and you have to go out and live out in the wilderness.
From Acapulco, Mexico, this is Anarchast.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. I've got a great first-time guest coming on. He's been a friend for a number of years. I've seen him at most Liberty conferences. Great guy. You might see him taking photos along with Avens O'Brien and Judd Weiss sometimes. They're a little photography clique. It's Yaakov Markel. You might know him as well on the internet. There's been a meme going around, Anarchy Jewish Man. It's actually a pretty funny meme. And he's been quite involved in many things, and he actually got very involved in a very serious situation that occurred in the last few weeks, which I found very impressive, not only on his part, but on the actual reaction from the anarchist community to a case of what looks like pedophilia. We'll get into that, all the details about it, and we've never really talked about how pedophilia would really be handled in an anarchist society. So we're going to get into that as well. But of course, Yaakov, the first question I have to ask you, because this is the first time on the show, is how did you become an anarchist?
So I've sort of always been an anarchist, actually. It started with both of my father's parents, who were actually stateless. My grandmother didn't have citizenship until I think she was 19 or 20. She was born in Palestine, and being a Jew in Palestine, she didn't have any sort of citizenship. And then my grandfather left Germany. He was born in Frankfurt, and he was his family got out of the country before the war started. And so they didn't have any state either. So my father grew up with two parents who were very stateless. And so we grew up in an environment that, never really recognized statism as something that was important or necessary or really something that had to do with us. It was something that other people believed in, but wasn't our life.
That's great. And knowing you have a lot of thoughts on the anarchist philosophy and things like that. And of course, this is a great topic to cover with someone who does think about these sort of things. And it was a few weeks ago, I believe, and I actually never watched the video because once I heard what it was about, I decided I just couldn't watch it. Apparently, a person by the name of Sean Windingland, I believe his name was, he was fairly well known from what I understand in the anarchist community. He was posting a lot in anarchist places. Most people didn't seem to like him from what I saw, but I've never heard of him. He wasn't actually a Facebook friend of mine, but apparently he posted a video of him and his two daughters. And actually, maybe Yaakov, you can take it from here because I didn't even watch the video.
Yeah, so the video is very hard to describe, just because of how, watching it affects you. But it was a video of him talking with his two daughters, like you said, and talking to them about their consent or, supposed consent to sexual relationship with him.
We should point out they look like they're about 6 or 7 years old.
They're twins, 6-year-old twins, and without getting into too much detail, but he was talking about them touching him and stuff like that, and supposedly getting their consent, or one of them sort of consented and one of them didn't. But kids are very easily manipulated, and he was giving them ice cream and all kinds of stuff to get them to do these things with him. And so those were the videos. There were some other things that people sent to me outside of that didn't get made public. But yeah, he was doing much more than what was discussed in the videos with them. So this became public, and I had been friends with Sean Windingland on Facebook since somewhere in 2015. He was a guy that had been around for a long time. Then I kind of unfollowed him. I hadn't really been seeing his posts for a few years, just because he had started posting all sorts of weird sexual stuff, like oversharing with things that, really didn't need to be public. And so I unfollowed him and kind of forgot about him for a long time. Then somebody tagged me on these videos and said, hey, I saw that you're a mutual friend. And so being the type of person that I am, I'm not the kind of person to sit around and just say, oh, well, somebody else will do something. I'm somebody too. We're all somebody. Every single one of us is we're all equally human and all equally have power. You don't have to be authorized to do something by some vote or whatever, right? We're all authorized to do something. So we made a page to help these girls with whatever future therapy they're probably going to need, help the mom with, taking care of them and making sure that they're growing up healthy and happy.
Yeah, that's great, and we'll get into more of how everyone's been helping and all that sort of thing. But before we get into that, I want to talk about, because I see this a lot, along with the roads, the other sort of topic that seems to come up with status that they just can't get their head around is, without government, then pedophiles will just run wild and they'll just be screwing every little kid and all this sort of stuff. And of course, that's not, I can't believe they even think that's the case. But it is an actual issue to be talked about, and what would actually happen in an anarchist society. I have my own views on it, but maybe you can go first, Yaakov, and we can kind of bounce some ideas around on how we think it would actually function in a free society.
Well, one thing a lot of people don't really realize about a free society is that all property is private property. So it's not like you have anybody that you don't allow or specifically authorize coming into your community. It's not like they can just go down to the park and prey on children. They can't go anywhere near the park because they're, the owner of that park might say we only authorize people who are coming with their own children or their nieces and nephews to come into this property and that sort of thing. So private property already puts up a serious roadblock to any kind of criminality, including pedophilia or really child molestation, right? So beyond that, I should
point out that would definitely work for someone preying on other people's little kids, but it wouldn't necessarily do anything with a person like this person who was preying on his own children. But go ahead.
Right. So, well, in general, in a free market, you would imagine that people are going to be insured for liability in various types of things. So let's say if I'm allowing you onto my private property, let's say it's a store, if you break stuff, you have to have insurance in order to cover it, right? We can't just allow you in and not have you covered for any damage you might cause. So somebody that already is throwing up red flags, like Sean Winningland, for example, he'd already been throwing up a lot of red flags. That probably would make him less and less insurable, which would force him further and further out to the fringes of society as other places become shut down to him, right? And that's the thing about ostracism, is that it's actually very effective. We're always choosing who we allow to be around us. The problem is that government gets in the way and forces us, like, with Gary Johnson, you have to bake the cake for these people, right? We don't have a choice to see the reality of the people that we're interacting with, right? So in his case, with his own children, he actually didn't have very much in the way of visitation rights with them. They had been divorced for a while. He was only allowed supervised visits at his mother's house, and the issue was that this happened during those visits that were supposed to have been supervised, but really, had there been a free market system surrounding this, the idea that he would have some sort of parental rights in the first place would have been somewhat different.
Yeah, we should point out, too, that obviously in an anarchist or free society, lots of bad things are going to happen. We're not saying that we have a free society and all of a sudden no one ever screws up, no one ever robs anyone, no one ever rapes anyone. Of course, that's going to happen. But a big part of it, and this is the big question again from a lot of status, is how would it be dealt with in a free society once it's already happened? So in this particular case, you have this person. He's been acting strange. A lot of people had a lot of questions. Apparently he got divorced and wasn't even really allowed to see his kids, so probably his past wife was aware of what kind of person this guy was. But then it became very clear that he actually was molesting his 6-year-old daughters. A lot of people go, well, how would anarchists handle that? And again, I have my own views on it, but maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
So imagine you're a person who has been relegated to totally uninsured status, and now you can't go into any stores, you can't go to the grocery store, you can't rent an apartment, you can't get a job. Nobody wants anything to do with you. You're relegated completely to the fringes of society, and you have to go out and live out in the wilderness, right? Now, you have two choices. Either you starve to death or die of the elements out in the wilderness, or let's say in the case of a pedophile, a child molester, you might go to an insurance company and say, look, I'm willing to voluntarily undergo chemical castration, and now I have no sexual function in my body, and I'm willing to do a 3-year program where I work for the company, and you put me through training and through therapy and all that stuff, and I don't make any money, but all of the money, all of the value that I create, or whatever is the maximum value that I create, goes to restitution towards my children, to pay for their therapy, to pay for their their proper healthy growth. And then maybe at the end of 3 years, if I've really proven myself, maybe you insure me at the lowest level, and you say, all right, we sign off on you, Sean, and you're okay to join society a little bit. And now you're being tracked, and you're volunteering for that. You're choosing to do that, and it's done in a way that there's no coercion, there's no gun pointed at you. It's just simply, if you don't, you can be out in the wilderness and go sleep in a cave, but nobody's going to sell you lumber to build a house. You want to cut your own lumber, no one's going to sell you a chainsaw. You're just thrown out of society, because again, everything in a free market in a free society is private property, or personal property, if that's your perspective.
Yeah, and one of the big questions, of course, we've lived in a very punishment-based society for centuries now, and it's the government's in charge of the law. They will punish these people, that sort of thing. I think it's a very screwed up sort of system. Of course, there's countless millions of people in U.S. cages in the U.S. Who never hurt anyone. So that's really how these things can kind of go. But again, a lot of people always ask, oh, so what would happen if my neighbor raped his kids, like 6-year-old kids like that? Really, the answer is, I don't know. What would you do? That's your neighbor. It's really up to you and your neighbors, if you know about this, to get involved. And that's why I think some people kind of grimace a little bit at anarchy, because you actually have to take some responsibility in your life. Now, I know me personally, if guy across the street, it definitely was proven, like this is proven because he did it on video, he said he did it, that he's been raping his 6-year-old little kids. I personally wouldn't go kill him, but I would definitely go and make sure the girls were okay. We'll talk about what actually happened in this case. But as far as punishment goes, I would be more just leaning to just trying to make sure he never does it again one way or another. But I know that a lot of people would, and I've heard this all the time, and for a lot of people out there, I kind of laugh, everyone on the internet, oh, I'd kill the guy. It's actually not that easy to kill a person. I don't know if anyone's ever pulled a trigger, or I've never done it, but I know, because I'm like, whoa, that's a serious thing, killing someone. So a lot of people are talk, but I'll give you an example. If that person across the street was for sure doing it, and the next door neighbor went over and blew his head off with a gun, I'd still have lunch with that next door neighbor. I wouldn't be like, now you're ostracized because you did that. It's like, no, that's I understand why you did that, and it makes sense, especially if he was going to continue doing that sort of behavior. So then that's up to the neighbor to decide what to do, and it's up to me to decide how I'm going to treat that neighbor. Because, for example, if that guy had trespassed on his lawn and that's all he had done, he stepped on a small corner of his grass and he blew his head off, I'd be like, no, I don't want you to be my neighbor. Get the heck out of here, or I'm moving, or something's got to happen, because that is not cool, right? So it's really up to people how to deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd like to also point out that right now, punishment is in the realm of, it's taken care of by the government, but they decide who to punish, but they also decide who not to punish, right? So you have, the example that you gave of, your next door neighbor rapes someone, and in a government market, in a government controlled society, if that guy's a cop, or if that guy's a politician, or if he's politically connected in some way, nothing's going to happen to him. And if you try to create justice there, actually the guns of the government will be used against you. So it really distorts justice. In a free market, we really have the opportunity to find true justice,
Not to mention that the police, even if they were decent and it was a decent system, no one really knows people's lives better than the people in their society, their friends, their family, their neighbors. And those are the people who should be getting involved in these situations. Calling in some guy in a blue uniform, half the time they're not even going to show up because they're too busy extorting people on the roads or trying to find some plants so that they can extort and take it away so they can make some money and stuff like that. So it's a really terrible system. But so let's talk about what actually happened in this case. I was really pretty impressed. I saw the video come out. I saw what it was about. I couldn't watch it. But then I just saw the comments coming in. And very quickly, I saw you in there. I saw a number of other people in there. Very quickly, a fundraiser was started. The goal was $5,000. They hit it very quickly. I believe it went over it. And tell us, exactly everything that happened from the point that you guys saw the video to where we are now.
So I saw the video. I actually got in touch with his mother, and I got in touch with the mother of the two children, and then I decided to do a fundraiser. I had spoken to them about it. Initially, we were talking about maybe doing something where people could donate, $5 a month, and over the course of time, with a bunch of people throwing in a few bucks a month, they would have however much it costs every month for the therapy and so on and so forth, and that could run for a long term. But we didn't really know how much that was going to be, how much therapy they're really going to go for, play therapy and actual, talking to a therapist. The mother's going to need to talk to a therapist for ways to how to approach parenting with these kids. And so I just, threw out a number, $5,000. I figured maybe we'll hit it, maybe we won't, it doesn't matter. That's just to get us off the ground for now, until we can figure something else out long term. Well, they hit that number in less than 24 hours. It blew me away. Honestly, I was crying a lot that weekend. The overwhelming support from the anarchist community was just amazing. Messages coming in from everybody. People were spending hours doing research, helping us find therapists, play groups, all kinds of stuff for these girls. It was just really amazing. The support was unbelievable.
Yeah, it's great. And of course, I should point out, if we lived in an anarchist society, it would have been a different situation. But unfortunately, we live in the statist society today. So if someone like me, for example, were to go over and kill him, I'd be in a cage for the next 30 years. So we can't do that and that sort of stuff, unfortunately, in today's world. But I think you had to. I think there's really no other choice in the world, especially there in the U.S. with such a giant police state, massive government. Really, you can't take the law into your own hands there. You just become the victim of the system. So I believe the police were called for that reason. Is that right?
The police were called because obviously there's nothing anybody else can do. CPS ended up coming out because that's just how it is. That was a little scary, Yeah. You never really know how that's going to go once you start inviting government agents. I think Ronald Reagan is the one that said the scariest words in the English language are "we're from the government and we're here to help," right? So yeah, once you start involving them, it's a little scary, but you don't really have much of a choice in a situation like that, because if somebody goes out and just kills him, or if we try to, enslave him to pay for his kids, restitution to his kids, right? That's, it starts getting kind of crazy. So you kind of have to operate within the system that exists.
So I believe he was arrested. I believe he's in jail at the moment. Maybe you know a bit more than that about that?
He was arrested. He has some charges. There's a current investigation, which will probably add some more charges to do with child pornography and things like that. Right now, as far as I know, it's just 2 charges of the child sexual acts. But the FBI is involved, and they'll have their own charges. Probably some stuff to do with computer-related, sending and receiving of child pornography, that sort of thing. He's gonna go away for a long time, and I would say also a lot of people commented on the various posts on the fundraiser saying, oh yeah, somebody ought to kill him, and I've commented there, and I'll say it again here. I think that going and killing somebody who's done damage to somebody else is really the wrong approach, because that person, really what they should be doing is making restitution. Justice is about restitution, not about punishment. Even if we kill him, those girls are still harmed. They still have to grow up and deal with those issues. So really what he ought to be doing is not sitting in prison rotting away, but he should be, he should maybe voluntarily go and sign up for a indentured servitude, that all of the money all of the value that he creates for some company goes to his daughters to help pay for these things, right? So, restitutive justice is possible in a free market. It's totally impossible, and actually in a government justice regime, it's not only impossible, but actually we get robbed twice, because now we're paying for him to be in prison,
Yeah, you just brought up all the people involved now from the government, FBI and police and lawyers and judges. It's probably going to cost millions of dollars just to put this guy into a cage, and then he'll be there for a while, and you have to just pay for that every year as well. The one sort of positive that some people might think is that, of course, when you go to prison in most places in the world and you're known as a pedophile, you have a pretty bad time, and some people will like that. I personally, again, I kind of agree with you there. I'm not looking for a justice in terms of beating him up or killing him. In fact, in many ways, these are screwed up people, right? Like, obviously, this guy's got some problems. I wouldn't doubt it at all if he was raped when he was a kid. He was
molested himself.
Well, there you go. So he's a really messed up person. Now, there's no excuse whatsoever. But I don't think the answer really ever is just to go and kill anyone. Although, as we pointed out earlier, if that's what someone else did, I wouldn't stop them.
Right. Yeah, you might pat them on the back and you'd go buy them a cup of coffee and say, hey, thank you for your service. But the thing is, there's a question there, because if he was actually working and making restitution to his daughters and then somebody killed him while he was doing that, then they're actually they're removing that source of restitution, right? So.
Not to mention, too, I just, if it was the anarchist way, he had been ostracized quite a bit. He decided to, just because it was so difficult to survive in life, that he decided to chemically castrate himself, decided to do years of therapy, and also to make sure that a certain percentage of his earnings go towards the therapy of these little girls for as long as necessary. At the end of it, if it all worked out, it would actually be a beautiful story. He actually would be getting older at that time. He'd be feeling so remorseful about everything that happened. The daughters would, obviously be, dealing with their emotions, but after they get through therapy, they might be able to forgive him. All of a sudden, there's this big hug at the end. Whereas the government way is millions of dollars. The guy's in a cage. He'll probably get out at some point, probably rape some kids again, and no one's going to be really happy about it. So whenever people question the anarchist way, I always like to just throw right back at them the status way. It's rarely a good solution.
It's actually not a solution at all. It's really, it just compounds the issue over and over again in every way. Like you said, he may go to prison. Maybe he gets sentenced to 60 years in prison, gets 30 years out of prison on good behavior, right? And they let him out, and he hasn't learned anything. He hasn't had any therapy. He hasn't done any restitution. All he's done is just sit in a cage for 30 years or 25 years or whatever it is. And now they let him out, and what's he going to do? He hasn't actually dealt with any of those issues that caused him to do this in the first place, right? So they're just letting out a person. They call it the what's the word that they use for prison? Reform, not reform. I don't recall. But anyways, there's no actual reform happening in prison. He's just sitting there and killing time and actually spending time with people who might be even a lot worse than him.
And lifting weights. Yeah, it's the craziest system ever, really, when you think about it. But let's talk a little bit more about what was raised. You're dealing with the mother. I saw that you posted a number of things that she was really very happy about how all these people had helped. Maybe you can just mention that.
Yeah, she was very stunned by all of the outpouring of support from people she doesn't know. Just people who knew him, even peripherally, just on Facebook, and there are a lot of messages that were sent to her, not just through me, but there were two other people that were helping me with that fundraising campaign, Derek Claus and Bex Farnsworth. So a lot of people were sending messages to her through them too, and the mother is just really, really blown away by this support. She wasn't expecting it at all, and she kind of doesn't know what to do with it even. But we raised about $5,500, which should cover things for quite a long ways, short term anyways, but should cover things for a while. And now we're thinking of how to go about doing a more long-term, recurring donation type of thing.
That's great, and that's what I've always talked about here at Anarchast. Is it's really about us getting involved and helping people in our community, in our society. And this was an excellent example of it happening. And you can kind of look at how this mother, who must be terrible for her. I don't know what happened when he was a kid. I don't know who molested him, but then now he's molesting his own little kids. It must be just absolutely traumatic for her, and for her to have all these people come out of the woodwork that she doesn't even know and trying to help. It must be like the one kind of silver lining in all this for her. And of course, that comes from the anarchist side of things, where we're not just trying to punish, we're trying to help people in our community however we can.
And it comes back to what I said earlier, that we're all individuals with personal responsibility. Every single one of us has the ability to go out and be somebody and do something. We don't have to wait for somebody else. We don't have to wait for somebody that's authorized. We can just go ahead and do whatever it is that needs to be done in the world that we see as an issue. We can go ahead and fix it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I've always said as well. So, Yaakov, is there anything else that we didn't mention? Anything you want to let people know about? Perhaps a blog or what you do or anything like that?
Oh, I'm just online. I do want to give a shout out to Dan Corliss. I'm not sure if that's a real name or just a username on Facebook, but he's the guy that actually talked to Sean, and Sean had sent him these videos and various things, and he was super cooperative. As soon as he saw this, he publicly exposed this, and that's how all of this came about. So again, thank you very much, Dan. And as far as myself, you can find me on Facebook, Yaakov Markel. Anarchy Jewish Man is a page that I'm kind of still figuring out what to do with. That's a joke that Luis Fernando Mises came up with and kind of took off. I do have a page called Today's Government Screw Up, if anybody's interested. It's documenting all kinds of government screw ups all the time, and it's there's no shortage of content for that page. That's me. Other than that, I tend to try and stay behind the scenes.
Yeah, I know, and I appreciate you coming on to talk about this. I know you were a little bit hesitant because you do like to stay a bit more behind the scenes, but for anyone out there who's at conferences, Liberty conferences, and sees Yaakov, he's a great guy. Definitely you want to meet him. He's been, I think, to most Anarchapulcos, and I'm sure he's coming again next year. And definitely follow him on Facebook. He's a great guy, always has cool content. So I'd like to thank you for coming on to talk about this, Yaakov, and thank you for your service and helping with this situation. And that's exactly what all of us need to do, and that is the answer to all of these things, is you need to get involved. And the more that we do that, the more beautiful world we will have. So I just want to mention all the videos for Anarchapulco are now available. You can buy them, purchase them to watch in your own homes. There's so many amazing videos. Check it out. We'll have a little ad for it after this. And if you like this video, please like, subscribe, share down below, especially if some statists who are wondering about pedophilia and how it'd be handled. And any questions or comments down below, both Yaakov and myself will try to get in there at some point to answer any sort of questions, as long as they're decent and not too horrible trolling. And that's it for Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. Peace, love, and anarchy.
Your rights to say what you want, think what you want, raise your kids the way you want, transact with who you want, and put what you want into your body are under attack. There's never been a time in history when this was more true than today. But at the same time, there's been an awakening of people like you who recognize that freedom is within reach, and they're turning the tables on the global elite. That's why, for the last 4 years, thousands of freethinkers and voluntarists like you had made the journey to Acapulco, Mexico to learn, interact, and create more freedom in their own lives. You may not have made it to the event, or if you did, you're likely to want to experience it again and again in your own home. I'm talking about 4 action-packed days of exciting, informed, expert speakers, all of whom are at the top of their game and all icons in the freedom and liberty movements. Visit anarchapulco.com/2019 VOD now to experience Anarchapulco and Cryptopulco 2019 as many times as you want, from the comfort of your own home or office.